discuter un peu les enjeux à HFP et mes priorités. So before I get going, a few things I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit, because some of you may know me, but some of you may not know me. And so I thought I would just give you a little bit of my background and sort of what I've done in my professional career in the Foreign Service, and then turn over to 3 items that I sort of want to discuss in a little bit more detail. So first, sort of what I've been up to in HFP during my first few months. So it's now been, I guess, 2.5 months in the position. Secondly, a little bit of the forward priorities. So what are my plans? What are the vision for HFP as we go forward? So what are the key priorities as I see it from the last the next 2-3 years? And then finally, just a few points on rotationality in a COVID environment. So Pam had sort of suggested that we talk a little bit about that and the challenges and the elements that go into that. So maybe just a bit about myself. I've joined the Foreign Service in 1997. Spent the majority of my career on the trade side of the department, but I've also worked horizontally across streams in political and advocacy roles, as well as having some exposure to development issues when I was in Geneva, when I was posted to the UN and to the WTO. And I've also had some exposure to development issues in my last position, where I was Director of South America Bilateral Relations. So it's really been one where I've been able to touch down on a number of the important streams that are represented by PAFSO, and to give me that sort of broad horizontal lens on what we do in the Foreign Service. So far, I've had the opportunity to do 3 postings. So I've had postings in Chile, in Geneva, as I said, at the WTO and the UN. And my last assignment, as Pam noted, was in Brussels, where I was leading our efforts to ratify the Canada-EU Free Trade Agreement. So at the European Parliament and the European Council in particular. So very fascinating assignment that I had at that juncture, and one where we got to see a lot of Minister Freeland at the time, and then Minister Champagne, who were very active in trying to help us secure that deal. At headquarters, I've done a fairly good mix of corporate, geographic, and policy roles. I've had a couple of stints in the geographics. I first started actually in the Asia Pacific branch when I joined on my first assignment there. And I've also, of course, just recently worked in the Latin America branch for South America. Interspersed between that, I've had a number of sort of headquarters assignments in the Trade Commissioner Service in corporate functions, in training and HR, which it's led me very much to the position I'm in now. So on that, I would say I'm so deeply thrilled to have taken over this position as HFP. I think it is categorically one of the most important positions that we have in the department, and one where we can really make a difference and work with all the communities to make sure we advance our common interests in rotationality. So it really is quite an honor for me to be here. Alors c'est vraiment un honneur d'être ici comme directeur exécutif dans HFP. C'est vraiment une position que j'ai comblée parce que je pense que c'est une qu'on peut faire une grande différence étant donné comme un agent du service extérieur. So what has been keeping me busy? Well, I've been very busy in the first 2 months, as I've quickly learned. There's lots going on, and I'm filling some very big shoes with the departure of Phil Pennington, who did an admirable job as executive director in this position as well. Some of the things, just to run you through kind of what's been on my mind. So first and foremost, like any manager, the first and most important priority for me has been to get familiar with all the files, of course, and to get to know my team and all the stream advisors that help serve the rotational community at headquarters through both of course, the abroad cycle and the headquarters cycle. And what I can say is I'm deeply, deeply impressed by the professionalism and commitment of my team. This is an outstanding group of individuals that have really done incredible work in difficult period of time right now, especially as we deal with COVID. I'm incredibly impressed by the commitment to get back to clients, to get back to you, to get back to everyone on the regular day-to-day interactions that you may have in terms of sorting out your interest and your career goals. So I think that's been something very important for me is to really get to know people. The second big priority for me in the last couple of months has been working on the completion of the assignment cycle for 2020, of course, at headquarters. And I know here Phil did some incredible work in context of COVID and the unfortunate situation where a number of postings had to be canceled last summer due to the pandemic. So there has been a little bit of work to do as I settle in here to complete that rotational cycle and to make sure that we can, finish off the placement of individuals through that process. So it's a little bit later than we'd normally wish this to be, but I think we're sort of 99% done, and that's great. Completing the headquarters 2020 cycle has also crept up on the launch of Abroad 2021, which has also been a big priority for me to get started on and to get that process underway. So I think most members will know we did launch a number of weeks ago. Employees' preferences are now in, and rankings by managers is well underway, and we will have completed that process by next Monday, following which we can then start to run into the normal assignment advisory committee cycle and secure and make some of the decisions in respect of the positions abroad for next summer. So that's proceeding along very nicely, and we very much been spending some time reviewing our guidelines, making sure our policy framework is up to date in context of COVID, and then helping manage some of the special conditions and circumstances that impacted last year's cycle and how we want to proceed with this cycle. So that's been an important focus for me in my first couple of months. And just by way of interest, there were 656 positions that were advertised in this cycle. And that is, I've got the numbers from last year, that's an enhancement from 450 last year. So this is what we sort of expected with COVID, but it certainly manifested itself in the way we did expect. And I'm also happy to see that we have 700 individual unique employees who have competed, who have applied for positions. So hopefully we'll be able to work through this and fill all of our positions over the next couple of months. Another key priority for me, and this doesn't impact PAFSO members as much as other communities, which is the demobilization exercise. So I think most individuals in the department know that the deputies had taken a decision about 2 years ago in respect of mobility and the desire to end mobility by the end of next summer. So a big part of my team has been working on the demobilization exercise with HSOS and other partners in HR branch to help us move forward the demobilization exercise so that employees that are currently mobile can secure a position at their substantive group and level so that they can take that on a permanent basis. So that's something that we're working on very closely and something in respect of moving towards the next mobility placement exercise that we hope to get underway very soon. So an important priority for my team, not as specifically directed implication for PAFSO, but something that is important nonetheless in HFP. Then the other elements that I would say have been important to me in the last number of months have been working on some of the selection processes. And I know this will be of particular interest to this community. So we've been working very closely on the FS1 process. So this is both the internal exercise and the external post-secondary recruitment exercise. So advancing quite well on the internal exercise, and the external is also moving ahead through the first initial screening stage. And then of course the FS3 process, which is much more advanced, and we're nearing completion of that process in the next month or two. We're hoping to have that wrapped up as well. We're also starting work on an FS2 launch. So we're in the final stages of completing our SOMCs, our Statement of Merit Criteria. as well as looking at specific intake exercises for the CS community, which we know we have some gaps in. So those are other selection processes that we're working on as well to get ready for launch too. And then I guess last but not least, one of the things I found out in this job is that I have to sign a lot of letters and a lot of applications. I have the subdelegated authority for all non-EX employees. So all acting assignments, all LWOPs, all of those things do come through me. So I do spend a lot of time on signatures. So some of you may have already seen my e-signature on a number of things in particular in relation to your own particular situation. So that's been another big thing for me in the last little while. So what are my priorities and vision for HFP over the next few years? So I've been spending some time thinking about this in terms of where do I want to take HFP and where do I want to take the engagement with rotational community writ large? And I've come up with a number of things that I think are important for me and things that I do want to work closely with this bargaining agent and others and the community writ large. And so this is sort of the things that I've come up with in terms of where I see, you know, my mandate and where I see I want to actually help make a difference. So the first is to complete and normalize our assignment cycles. So one of the things I think we've seen in particular this year, and it relates to, you know, rotationality in a COVID environment, is the need to regularize and the need to be systemic on being able to complete our assignment cycles in an efficient manner. So une des choses que je veux vraiment faire, c'est mettre des efforts sur la complétion des cycles des affectations dans une manière coordonnée, efficace. Alors, de cette manière, je pense que la meilleure chose pour nous à faire, c'est vraiment de cibler des dates à compléter les cycles d'affectation chaque année. Alors, pour moi, c'est de compléter tous les éléments pour les cycles à l'étranger en décembre, autant que possible, et pour le cycle des affectations à la centrale, vers juillet dans toutes les années normales. So something that I want to spend some time to make sure we can do this launch and have good, efficient assignment cycles as we go forward. This benefits all the employees, of course, who are interested in assignments, but it helps us ensure that we can meet the completion of having all of our people assigned in a good and efficient manner. So that's something I do want to spend some time on. Second sort of key priority for me as I look forward is to strengthen and build our communities within the rotational communities. So by this, I mean strengthening our engagement between our employees in HFP and our stream advisors to really help work with each community. So the trade community, the FPDS community, the MCO community, the assistants, the IA community, and the CS. How can we work much more closely with each of these communities to make sure we help you and know your interests, know your pressures, know what you need as distinct communities within the rotational community writ large. So something I do want to work with my stream advisors, work with the team to have that better engagement with employees on a more personal level. So I think this is something that is also important for me as well. Another priority for me is to strengthen our evidence-based decision-making in terms of HR planning and the rotational pools. So an important thing here is, of course, to have a better sense of the ebb and flow of rotationality, when people are coming in, how this is impacting our decisions on how many people we need for various selection processes, et cetera, et cetera. So having a grounding or better grounding in the data that drives some of our planning exercise is also something very important for me. And then here I would make the link to the important priority of diversity and inclusion. So better understanding data that we can collect or, you know, collect that is, you know, based on individuals' desire to share that. I know it is something that individuals do have to agree to consent to share that data, but what can we do to better understand the diverse perspectives and the diverse nature of our rotational pool? So something that I do want to look at and think about as we go forward. The other part of you know, this is also the desire to complete our selection processes more timely and efficiently. So I've mentioned that we are working, of course, on the FS3. We're working on an FS1 process. But as we go forward, one of the visions that I have is to do these on a much more regular basis and a much more efficient basis as well. So to me, this would mean, we've talked about this, I think, a number of times in my career, is having these on a sort of biannual basis, or to be done every couple of years. So that's something I want to strive for as well. I think it's important that we do run these regularly. And I think it's important that we have a sort of systematic process by which way we are thinking about selection processes and competitions for the rotational community. So something that I'm going to look at with my team as we go forward as well. Linked to that, of course, is to make sure we fill our rotational pools. So the whole desire of having systematic competitions is to be able to make sure we have our pools filled as best possible at all times. So over time, we've built up some gaps in our pools, and we want to make sure that we're filling those and closing those, because this will help with the rotationality and will also help to make sure that we do have all the resources we need at all levels within the rotational community as we go forward. Another priority is to work with CFSL and CFSD, so Louis Marcotte's group, on the launch of the Foreign Service Training Program and the integration of new recruits. So we are, of course, working on our FS1 internal, and we're working on our FS1 external competitions. And so when we are able to bring on people into the FS ranks, we want to have a good collaboration with CFSD on the training program for the FS community. So something that is also important for me. Another priority going forward, of course, is policy coherence in HR planning and HR regulations. So something that behind the scenes, we do a lot of work with other HR colleagues in terms of, what are the policy frameworks for staffing? What are the policy frameworks for leave? What are the policy frameworks that relate to some of the elements that are agreed in collective bargaining? So making sure that HFP has a good window on that so that we can support our communities and our clients in respect of questions they may have on policy issues that impact them, is also something that I want to make sure all of my stream advisors and my team are very familiar with. And then the last priority I would say is just strengthening engagement with bargaining agents. I think it's really important that HFP works in collaboration with our unions and with our bargaining agents. I really believe that working together is the way to advance issues, and in a win-win sort of manner is sort of the way I envision working in the future. So having that strong relationship with Pam and other presidents of bargaining agents is something that I really want to strive to do in my next few years. And then lastly, just a few reflections on COVID assignments in a COVID era and some of the challenges there. I've also thought a bit about this, and I know I've come into this job sort of halfway through our management of the last cycle, and certainly the implications of what COVID has done to rotationality last summer. But sort of more on a personal basis, I think some of the things that I reflect on in this environment is more the importance of resilience, the importance of patience. This is a really challenging time for everyone. We're all impacted in different and unique ways. And I think it's become more and more important that we have our support networks, we have our resources, we have, our people to help us through. We probably all know people that have been impacted by COVID. And, myself, I have elderly parents, so I try and keep an eye on them very, very much on a regular basis. But I think, that importance of resilience, that importance of patience, that importance of having community and caring for your well-being are really important things for everyone right now. In relation to assignments, I think I know Phil and team before me have been dealing with incredible challenges with the cancellation of assignments abroad last summer. And as we look forward, as I mentioned before, we have a significant enhancement of positions that we're offering for Abroad 2021. So I'm struck as well by the complexity of that challenge. That's something that's really dawned on me in my first couple of months, is the complexity of dealing with what we had to address last year, but then also looking towards the future and filling our positions next summer. I think it's easy to say that nothing has been easy in respective assignments over the last 6 months. As I said, I think concern for well-being, that's an important element that's also touched me. I think it's really important for people to care for themselves. And at posts, something that I think about a lot is some of our smaller posts and some of our posts that are, in hardship conditions or have faced FSD 64 status. I think for them, this has been even more challenging and something we're very conscious of. And certainly something that, we want to watch and make sure that there's no burnout, and that we can, from an HFP perspective, support these posts to the extent that we can. Of course, at headquarters, similar concerns. I know people are working from home with family, with children. And so this has been a challenge to juggle personal and professional lives. And I think, again, important to care for yourself, to care for your well-being, to care for your families. I think this is something that we all need to heed and all need to sort of lead by. So why don't I leave it there and pass the floor back to Pam for questions and answers. As I said before, really an honor for me to be here with everyone today, and really an honor for me to be in this position. I think it's a really critical one, and I'm looking forward to working with Pam and for all the members of the PAFSO community in the years ahead. Merci.
CJP, thank you very much. I really appreciate your sharing this with such openness and honesty with us, and early on in your mandate, so that we can influence and shape your thinking. This is great. And I really appreciate your willingness to reach out. I see we've got a couple questions already, one on the chat and one on the Q&A. And the first one was, has there been a definitive decision about the FS4 level? Doesn't sound like there's a competition for that level on the horizon. And that's a question that's dear to my heart as well, since I'm in that cadre. So yeah, I understand there are some discussions. I've heard from a few members that there are discussions going on in different branches about which position should be identified as FS4 and so on. And maybe if you could fill us in on what's up, that would be great.
Sure. So do you want to just one by one, Pam, or do you want to take a couple and answer? It's up to you.
Maybe let me look and see. They don't look necessarily related. So maybe do that one, and then I'll keep track and see if there are some that we could group together.
Okay. So sure. On the FS4, no, I would say there's no definitive answer at this point in time on how we're proceeding with that. This is a file I think is just starting to be looked at in terms of how do we want to look at the FS4 community, and then, what are our needs there? And then of course, going into, identification of gaps and what we would need if we do decide to do another selection process. So I'd say this is a file that would be behind other priorities, such as completion of the FS1, the 2, and the 3 processes. But it is one that is starting to get reflected upon in terms of where we're going to go with the FS4 community writ large. So I think early stage right now, and something that I'm sure once we get advanced, we'll want to have discussions with you, Pam, of course, and your members on that.
Oh, okay. Because I remember in 2017, I was just looking at my files yesterday. Che Van Hastricht and we did a little consultation session, consultation process with current FS4s and HFP on this question of, what should HFP, what should an FS4 job look like? On the assumption that it would be this sort of specialist job. And I think Che did a paper in the end. I could not find myself this paper, but I remember we sort of came to a consensus on some principles, and I understood it was well received, but that, it got overtaken by events and they were not ready to make decisions. So I certainly would be happy to revisit that process and do something like that again if there was openness on the management side for that, because I think it is, it's a category that that has not really been a group of people that haven't been used to full advantage since the category was created. So, you know, we'd like to see that happen if we can.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Pam, if you have a paper, Shay's paper has not found my desk somehow. So if you have that, I would love to read that, because I think
I'll see if I can find it. I couldn't find
yeah.
it yesterday in my archives, but it's probably somewhere. So I'll dig. And worst comes to worst, I'll ask him. I'm pretty sure he's got it. He's kept it himself somewhere. So I see there's another question. So two issues on acting, that when acting in a position abroad, if we want to extend, we still need to put in 3 positions at level in CAMS. There's a major difference between asking to extend for 1 year at a current post and committing to moving the family and going on another assignment abroad with a 2 to 5 year length, depending on the hardship level. So can we look at this? I would also add, I mean, another thing that we hear a lot about from people is the requirement to put in, 3 positions, especially if, following on the heels of the FS4 discussion, if you're an FS4, sometimes there are really only 1 or 2 assignments that you're really properly qualified for, So to have to put in something else, sometimes it's a bit of a, you're reaching a little bit. So if you could, is there any thinking on maybe being able to revisit some of those requirements?
So I would say right now, Pam, I think we've kept our I think we review our guidelines for every cycle, and we update or we tweak as needed. I think in relation to extensions, so extensions for those that are in acting positions, our policy has been pretty consistent on this over the last number of years, which is, you have to put in an application for an extension if you are acting abroad. Then of course that would get considered depending on other applicants to that position. I think the idea here is to make sure that we are keeping open, positions for regular rotationality. That doesn't mean that we won't look at extensions of those that are in acting positions, but we do want to allow, for fairness and transparency, everyone to have an opportunity to take a look at those positions. So that's why that policy has been sort of maintained, and I think that's been something that's been in place for a number of years now. In relation to the FS4, I think that's a good question you're raising here, Pam, because it is a smaller community, generally speaking, as compared to others. But so we do have a normal policy where we have candidates have to put in for 3 at level, a minimum of 3 at level. And of course, you can apply for as many at level as you wish. But I think, there would be, I think sufficient positions normally in any cycle at all levels for candidates to do pick 3 at the substantive group and level to be able to meet those eligibility requirements. I'll take note of this in terms of something that, we'll put through sort of a, feedback loop in HFP for future cycles. So I've jotted this down, and something that I'll raise with my team as we go forward.
Oh, okay, thanks. I mean, one other thing people have raised with me is that, FS4s applying for, say, program manager abroad jobs that are at FS3 are considered group 2 or, second category applicants, which doesn't really make sense. It's like, I mean, I understand you want to limit the number of actings, but like if in fact it's, it's actually a level lower, and they have the same amount of program manager or deputy director type experience. I understand for missions it's a little bit higher cost because it's a higher salary. But to me, I found it very odd that, someone who is an FS4 who's been a program manager or deputy director several times is, applying for an assignment on the same level as someone who's an FS2 who's looking for a stretch to something that they have not done already. So that to me seems a little bit illogical. And given that it's such a small cadre of FS4s, something that, you might want to, might be able to address a little bit more easily. So I see there's another question. Someone's asking, would be interesting to know if there's a chance postings in the summer 2021 get canceled or postponed like summer 2020. I suspect the answer is nobody really knows, but we're doing our best not to have that happen. But I will let you actually give
Yeah.
that.
No, absolutely, Pam. I mean, we all recognize that COVID is very fluid, so I can't make any predictions or assurances as what will happen over the next 6 months. I mean, obviously, we are proceeding on a normal basis here, and that's been sort of the principle of the way we've approached Abroad 2021. But you know, we all know what happened last summer or this summer. And hopefully that doesn't occur again, because I think the most important thing is for the global community to get a solution for COVID. But I wouldn't want to make any sort of definitive assurances as to what may or may not happen in Abroad 2021 if COVID does become worse.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. I see there's another one. Will competencies passed as part of the FS3 competition be reflected in CAMS as centrally assessed, including with a view to avoid being reassessed during the next FS3 competition? So will you be able to keep your what do you call them? Like your validity of your competencies for a while, or are you going to have to go back every competition?
My understanding is that each competition is unique, but this is a question I'd have to defer to my staffing experts on in terms of how that intersects with each unique SOMC. So let me take that back to HSOS and HSOP, who are sort of the real substantive staffing experts. But my understanding is that each time you go through the process, you'd present yourself as a unique candidate to that SOMC. So, you know, we do have standard competencies that are evaluated each time we do one of these selection processes, but I'm not 100% clear on whether these would stand from a prior competition or not. So let me check on that and I will get back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, okay, thank you. I think that would ease a lot of people's stress if they knew that once they had, you know, once they had gone through that they could relax, you know, for a few, at least, you know, 2 or 3 years, if other opportunities come up and not have to go through this. So I see there's a couple of questions about relating to the one in particular on the future of the FS1 stream, comments about, you know, the needs to keep the pools full and so on. So someone asking future of the FS01 stream, particularly those who came in through the FSIA and beforehand. There's 120 or so in the department. Only 52 positions abroad, half of those, less than half requiring foreign language, number of FS1s set to increase. So concerned about career progression, you know, what's going to happen in the upcoming FS2 cycle, who will be prioritized, will MCOs be prioritized, and what will the posting prospects be? So, I mean, this is something that's dear to PAFSO's heart, in that, you know, we are the group who does have rotationality as an actual condition of our employment. And so, you know, to say for foreign service officers to not have a chance to do foreign service is really not giving us the opportunity to do the jobs we were hired for. So we definitely support the prioritization of FS for those positions. The flip side, though, I know I've heard from other people, including, you know, quite a few from the FSIA, that rotationality does have differential impacts on different groups, right? In particular, you know, women or, you know, parents of young children and so on. And one of the things PAFSO is about to start work on is a GBA plus analysis of our collective agreement. And I'm wondering, maybe in addressing this, if you could talk a bit about, you know, what kind of work is the department doing to look at the GBA plus type differential impacts of these policies on different groups? I mean, you know, the Foreign Service will always require people to serve abroad. That's not going to and should not change. But has there been any effort, or are there any plans to look at, you know, how that affects different people and how things may need to be, how that might need to be reflected in the policies?
Sure. So do you want me to just start with the FS1s and 2s and then come back to a little bit of what we're doing I guess, GBA plus and elements to ensure that we're looking at those issues as we consider assignments and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so well noted on the FS1. In fact, I had a conversation yesterday with a colleague at the FS1 level along the similar lines. So maybe similar questions that are being asked here as yesterday. And certainly, you know, one of our big priorities, I mentioned this earlier, is to be able to fill our pools and to make sure that we do have, you know, sufficient rotational individuals so that we can prioritize and we can work with you to ensure that we have FS colleagues abroad in the positions that we do have overseas. I did take note of the comment around 120 FS1 positions, roughly 52 abroad. I think what we strive for is here having relative balance here in terms of the number of positions abroad to the number of positions at headquarters. Sometimes, you know, they'll tilt one way or another, but in general speaking, we do want to make sure that there's enough positions for individuals to be able to apply and be successful on securing assignments. So that's something that is important for us. And certainly, as it relates to the FS1, we'll be looking at that in terms of making sure that we do have the right number of people in the FS1 cadre and the right number of opportunities for people to look at positions abroad as well. In relation to the FS2 process, I'm just trying to remember the question here. What will it look like in terms of, I believe, the SOMC and how will that impact various communities? What I would signal here is we're finishing up the work on the SOMC right now. Of course, I can't get into the details of what will be on that, but we do want to make sure that it's accessible to all the rotational communities. So this would be something that we want to make sure that everyone sees themselves in that. So that they can present themselves as strong candidates for that process when we do launch it. So that would, of course, include the MCO community and to make sure that their needs are met. We do have a ginger group, or Heidi has a ginger group that looks at these, and that has a representation from all the distinct communities within the rotational group. So we get feedback to make sure that the elements that are going into the SOMC reflect the broader needs of the whole entire rotational community. So that's something very much we're working on. As I said, we're hoping to have that launched in the next month or so, so that we can get started on the FS2 process as well. In terms of the question on you know, GBA plus and analysis of collective agreement, I applaud that. Actually, that's a great idea, Pam, and I think that's a great initiative that you're doing to take a look at the collective agreement through that lens. As it relates to the assignment process, what we do is we have, in fact, we'll be having this week, is a full training session on unconscious bias with the members of the AAC. So this will be an opportunity for experts in this field to provide a concrete training on unconscious bias, so that when AAC members are reviewing the candidates and reviewing the decisions, they're thinking through that lens. I know our colleagues in staffing, so again, our colleagues in HSOS and HSOP have developed guidelines and toolkits on using GBA plus for staffing processes. So that's something also that we want to ensure that we're doing as we look at the FS staffing processes as well, to make sure that we are you know, adhering to some of the best practices in GBA plus analysis and making sure that we're looking through those lenses. So those are just a few areas in which we're trying to move forward some of these elements so that we are ensuring a good lens on diversity, on inclusiveness when we look at our rotational community.
Thanks. And someone is asking, how are we doing this in terms of recruitment? And I hear you with promotion and assignments, but is there an effort to strengthen the diversity and inclusion lens when it comes to recruitment, or has that been part of the process as far as you know?
So yes, I mean, I'm coming into this a little later than, so a lot of these, the FS3 and the FS1 sort of predate me, so I can't go back on what went into launching those in the initial sort of phases. But I would say that absolutely, this is an important consideration, that when we do develop and we think about, SOMSIs and ensuring that everyone can see themselves in it, this is a lens that we want to make sure, and the experts who are putting together the SOMSIs are reflecting, right? So this is very much an important priority for us to ensure that we do allow all individuals to see themselves in the processes that are launched.
Okay, thanks. And someone is asking as well, what procedures does HFP have in place to ensure that the greatest number of FS are placed in the greatest number of FS positions, especially abroad? Will the assignments committee be confirming non-FS in FS boxes in the first round?
Right. So good question. I think this links to our desire to fill our pools, right? So I think everyone has seen the assignment guidelines, and the assignment guidelines are Group 1 candidates are FS at group and level, or rotational employees at group and level. So that's our first priority, full stop. So we will be looking at group and level as the first priority as we start up the assignment cycle, and then moving down from there. So will there be non-rotational individuals who fill FS positions abroad? I would say yes. I mean, that typically happens in any assignment cycle, as there will be gaps between the demand and supply of individuals for positions abroad. And so that's something that we're trying to rectify by having, two things: filling our pools, and secondly, having regular selection processes. So as we go forward, the idea here would be that there'll be more and more opportunity for us to actually meet those objectives, which is, I think, a common objective between HFP and PAFSO and your members, which is we want to fill our positions abroad to the extent possible with FS members who are at group and level as we go forward.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you. And there's another question continuing on the theme of postings for FS1s. Just is GAC making any effort to prioritize? I mean, is there any movement? I know that there were a lot of FS1 positions that were drafted way back when, or that were reclassified in some places, classified up a level to protect them from draft. And so then that puts people who are applying for postings in an acting situation. Is there any move to look at some of those positions abroad and to make sure that there are more positions for FS1s, or is there any move to create additional positions for those junior first assignments? It's I suspect we're not in an expansion environment in most missions, but we can hope.
No, I mean, I think this is a an important consideration that you are bringing forward, and something that I want to have discussions on in terms of making sure we do have appropriate opportunities for all members at all levels. So this includes the FS1. Very conscious that in the last deficit reduction cycle, there were a number of FS1 positions that were unfortunately cut, and so I think this is something that we do need to take a look at to ensure the viability and ensure sustainability of this group and level. I can't make any commitment to that in terms of what this will entail, but certainly something that is on my radar as well for broader discussions as we go forward.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I mean, we know that we can't expect you to wave your magic wand and transform all of these things in the department as we speak, but I appreciate your willingness to discuss them and to give people info on where things stand. I think that's important. I mean, and that's one of my key messages to GAC in general is, I think sometimes when we don't have the answers, you sort of don't want to talk about things, but of what I've seen from PAFSO members is that people do understand the complexities and are quite, are reassured to know that these are being, that these are on the radar, and that things are being worked on, even if they can't be solved right away. I see that there was another question about the possibility of stream specific or, specific promotions to address certain gaps, like in the MCO group, for example.
Yeah.
There's a huge gaps. Is there any plans to do things to address those? Also, I was at the Diversity and Inclusion Council meeting the week before last, and the head of the new, I'm not sure what it's called, I think Anti-Racism Secretariat, was talking about, they've identified a need for targeted promotions to address, equity issues. So I wonder if you know anything about that, if you could tell us if anything is going on to deal with those.
Yeah, so I think on the streams, on the stream specific gaps, certainly I'm conscious of some of the issues in relation to the MCO community. I think that's something that Ruth over in A Branch and others have raised to my attention. At this point in time, our priority is completion of the FS1 and FS3 and launch the FS2, which will be inclusive to all communities. I think that's our first priority, is going through these, processes. We hope to have a very, robust number of individuals that are qualified and are available for promotion. So I think that's our first priority at this point in time, is to complete that and see where that leads us. If there are stream specific gaps at that point in time, and there are, specific needs, then that's something I'll take a look at that juncture. But I think our normal process to do these is to have selection processes that are open to all 4 communities at the same time. And that's something that is currently underway. But it is an issue that I'm aware of and conscious of, and things that I've had some discussions with in terms of what might be needed down the road for some of these communities if we still have some very significant gaps there. In relation to targeted promotions and the Anti-Racism Secretariat, again, I think this is something that's very much on the minds of EXCO and senior management. I think, there's a very, very strong awareness of the need to ensure that the department's community and executive community in particular are well reflected by what is the diverse nature of the Canadian society writ large. What I can't say is what measures are being looked at to address shortfalls or gaps if they do exist. I think this is something that executive committee and senior management are looking at and reflecting upon in terms of what are some of the challenges here and what are the measures that could be undertaken to address some of those deficiencies.
Okay, thanks. That's, definitely, definitely an interesting issue, right? I totally understand the need to do that. And I understand that, it would make sense. I also understand that, there would probably be quite a reaction from other parts of the department on, who gets the attention first on some of these things, and that it's not going to be an easy issue for anyone to deal with. But I'm glad to know that it's on the radar. There's another specific question about with the FS1 and FS3 processes not yet finalized, what happens if someone takes an assignment and is not successful in the process, or inversely is successful in the FS3, for example, but has been confirmed in an FS1 or FS2 posting? Will they be able to get out of that posting or assignment that they've committed to?
Yeah, so my advice to people here is when you're, and this is the advice we gave in all the assignment lounges that we did earlier in October, November. When you're applying at your position, you're applying at group and level. They're currently, sorry, somebody's just calling me here. So normally people are applying into the cycle at their group and level. And when we go through the process, we'll confirm individuals based on the guidelines that we have published. But if an individual is, for example, let's just take a hypothetical that you're an FS2 and you end up being successful in the FS3 and you are occupying an FS3 position abroad, so you'd be nominated into an acting position. Normally, in a situation like that, we would confirm the individual in their group and level because they're actually sitting in a position that is at their future level, right? If you are, sorry, the converse of that was if you don't succeed, or?
So if you don't, if you're in an acting and you've been confirmed for an acting, but you don't succeed in the competition, will you still get to go, or could you be bumped for somebody who actually ends up on a substantive list?
I see. Okay. Well, that would be subject to when we complete and send out the nomination confirmation messages. So we're working through that on the basis of the guidelines. So, we'll look to confirm group and level first, and then we'll move to candidates that are not at group and level. But if once the AAC has rendered a decision and we've nominated a candidate to a position abroad, then that candidate has been nominated to that position abroad. So we wouldn't retroactively withdraw a nomination once it's actually been issued to the individual.
Okay, I think that would comfort a few people. That's good to know. And I see there's another one from the chat about how is HFP approaching cross-stream assignments, knowing that technically they're all the same stream now, or we just look at a group and level. And do you have any advice for candidates who are interested in these? For example, a political officer interested in an MCO assignment. Another kind of related issue is how do people, if people are interested in switching streams, is there a specific process that they should go through? Like I know that there's one person that I'm aware of who has done 3 MCO or security manager RPM positions in a row, and has been contacting, trying to switch streams from FPDS to the MCO group and can't really get an answer about what would need to happen, which seems odd to me since I know that cadre is understaffed and so on. And I think that this is something that's of interest to a lot of people, and PAFSO definitely promotes the idea of mobility, being able to do, we don't think that streams should be abolished. I mean, we, as a professional foreign service, we recognize that, you do need to specialize and train to a certain extent, but it would be great if there was a better sort of roadmap for what you would like to do, how you could go about getting into a cross-stream assignment if you want to, just broaden your experience, which I think is to the benefit of both us and GAG.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me just start with the cross-stream assignments first, and then we can come back to changing streams. So in terms of cross-stream assignments, I think the best advice I would give to any member who's interested in applying for a position in a different stream is to really start with the hiring manager and hiring group in terms of what they would bring to this position. So reach out to the prospective manager in terms of what are the skills, the backgrounds, the competencies that you would bring to that position that you're interested in. So sell yourself, right? Because I think that's the best mechanism to secure a position in a different stream. When we come to the AAC, of course, it is, we start with, the rankings and the nominations from the managers who are actually selecting the individuals to come on their postings, and then they work through there. So if a manager says that, somebody who's an FPDS officer would be the best for an MCO position, then that's something that the hiring manager can put forward as their preference, and then the AAC would certainly look at that. So that's very much my best advice here, is to really get out there, explain your background, explain your experience, explain what you would bring to the position that you're interested in, and as a first basis. In terms of changing streams, I take your point on having a better roadmap. And that's something that, I talked earlier in the discussion about having a policy framework and really strengthening a little bit of what we're doing in HFP in this regard. And I think this is one of these areas where I do want to take a look at. I haven't been exposed yet in this position to specific requests for changing streams. So I haven't actually seen this in motion in terms of, you know, how this would be considered, how this would be looked at, and what are the factors that would go into, you know, allowing a member to change streams, say from trade to FPDS, or, you know, IA to FPDS, whatever the context may be. But I do think there is a need for us to have a clear framework around that. And that's something I'm going to take up within the team. The way you could do it right now, of course, is by expressing yourself through the selection processes. So if an FS, you know, trade wants to become political, they could, you know, make that very clear when they put their application, their letter into the various selection processes that are underway, to express that real desire to switch streams during that competitive process. And that would be, you know, a way in which a member could do that. But I do want to come back to the roadmap, and I do want to come back to understanding what our mechanisms and processes would be insofar as, you know, individuals that may be interested in changing streams. But I do think normally we don't look at this on a very proactive basis. It's very, very case by case.
Oh, okay. If you don't mind, maybe I'll put this person in touch with you directly to see if she could at least get an answer on the specific request that's been out there apparently for a while. But
oh, okay.
I know, you know, as an FS4 or as a political officer as well, sometimes I feel like, you know, we others have access to our stream assignments much more easily than we have the ability to move to other streams, you know. And sometimes I joke and it's like, oh, everybody thinks that, you know, they read the New York Times and the Economist and therefore they can do an FPDS job. But when we express an interest in another stream, it becomes, well, oh no, you need to have this specific course. And then the answer is, well, I'm willing to take that specific course. Tell me, you know, what the basics are for, you know, being able to be considered in something where there, you know, there are probably a lot of cross-cutting skills. So I think that would really be of relevance to people. I know CFSI has those training roadmaps, which help learning roadmaps, which help a bit. But I think it would be useful if it was more explicitly tied to, you know, if you were, when you were selling yourself, you could say, look, I'm interested in this cross-stream assignment as an MCO or FSIA or whatever, and I've done these 3 courses, you know, and this is my experience. I think that would be really useful. I see that we're at 9:03 and we booked you for an hour. So we're coming up on the hour. I don't know if you're in a hurry, if you need to go right away, if maybe I could offer one last chance to anybody who has questions. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I think that we have dealt with most of the comments. We've dealt with all the questions. If anyone has any last questions or comments, it's a little bit easier if you actually use the Q&A function, which is in the bottom middle of my screen. That way it pops up more clearly so that we can pick out a question. Does anyone have any last questions or anything for JP, or any comments that they want to make? I'm not seeing any. If you prefer to speak, you can use the hands up function on your screen as well, and then I can unmute you so you can talk. I'm not seeing anybody. I see we're sort of losing a few people as we hit the end of our booked time. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I will just say merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for doing this. We really appreciate it, and I hope this won't be the last time where we have this kind of discussion. It's really very much appreciated. And thank you, everybody. I'll send out the information on our next PAFSO breakfast, which these are always, we try to have them always the second Tuesday of each month. So we will we'll let you know what's happening then. So merci beaucoup. Thanks, everybody, and goodbye.
Merci, Pam. It's great to be able to participate today. So thank you to you and to everyone for joining today.
Thank you. And we'll see everybody soon. Take care.
Merci. Bye.
Bye-bye.